Hey Photo World, takeandtalkpics.com. I'm Rob Kruger, and this is episode 95 with street photographer and podcaster Ibarionex Perello.
Don't be afraid to change it in whatever ways you need to change it in order to make it work for you.
Hey Photo World, today's featured guest is Ibarionex Perello. Ibarionex, are you ready to share with Photo World today?
Absolutely. Let's get to it.
Ibarionex is a street and portrait photographer based out of Los Angeles, California. With over 25 years experience in the industry, he has become a well-known figure among modern photographers. He has authored 5 books on photography and has been published in several blogs and magazines. You may know Ibarionex from his podcast, The Candid Frame, which started in 2006, and you can tune in for a new episode each week. Ibarionex, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And I found out about you from another photographer. I think it was Levi Sim who told me about you. And he was like, you got to talk to this guy. He's a genius podcaster, aside from his awesome photography, and he knows how to interview. And he told me you're going to be like the best interviewer ever. So it might get turned today where you're in control here. But can you share with Photo World a little bit more about you and what you're doing?
Right now, I'm always doing a lot of things, but I've pared it down recently. But the thing I'm most focused on right now is the podcast, which is, as you mentioned, a show that I started back in 2006. And it is an interview show which features conversations with photographers, not about equipment, not about gear, not about technique, but about photography and about career and about the business of photography. It all gets sort of mashed up together. I started the show because I was listening to the podcast probably starting around 2005 as part of my daily commute. Mm-hmm. And I automatically was lured to all the photo-related content. But a lot of it revolved around equipment and gear. And I worked at a photo magazine, several photo magazines, and I was already immersed to my eyeballs about the equipment stuff. I wrote about it, I interviewed people about it, and I just didn't want more of the same.
Right.
What I really was interested in is I wanted to hear about photographers and their work and what was behind it. And I thought, well, no one else is doing it, so why don't I try and do it?
Right.
Because I knew a lot of photographers already because had been in the industry for a long time. And I knew how to interview people as a result of writing all these articles. I just needed to learn and figure out the audio stuff. And so I borrowed a friend's digital audio recorder, and I just started scouring the internet to figure out, okay, what do I use to edit audio? How do I get a podcast on a server? What's an RSS feed? All those things. Because I think at the time when I started, iTunes had not yet added podcasting, or just had. I can't remember exactly, but it was that early on. And so there wasn't a whole lot in terms of resources in terms of how to create a podcast as there is now. So I just started putting out these interviews at first every couple of weeks. And eventually I did it every week, and now I'm close to 300 interviews. So I'm really excited and proud of that. So that's really sort of the big focus right now. Mm-hmm. Currently, I'm working with on an NPR show called Bullseye with Jesse Thorne. I signed a deal with him to work with him for about a year, and that's providing me a great opportunity to learn how the sausage is made for an NPR show. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stuff that I'm learning there is going to be influencing the show in the near future.
Very nice.
And then I'm teaching photography. I teach workshops through the Los Angeles Center of Photography. I am a part of the Arcanum, Trey Radcliffe's Arcanum, so I'm a mentor to about 10 photographers currently, and I still do the occasional freelance gig as a photographer, as a speaker, as a writer. So there's no shortage of things for me to do.
Yeah, keeping yourself busy, and that friend is still looking for that recorder you borrowed all those years ago. So, right?
Unfortunately, I give it back to him, and I've invested in more equipment than it probably needed. But
We all do.
that's the
Well,
world of podcasting.
I know I did, especially for just having started this past April. But, when you're running this, when you were doing your photography and then you've transitioned into the podcast and just day to day, we kind of have to keep going. And there's the passion that motivates us. But do you have a quote or a mantra you live by that kind of keeps you moving forward?
I think that's changed a lot. I have this mantra on my wall that says, I can achieve the things that I want for my tomorrow by doing the things I least want to do today. And
Yes.
I think that's probably, if I have any mantra, it's that. Because a lot of my work life involves doing stuff that isn't particularly exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty mundane, the stuff that I really want to put off endlessly. And so I've just tried to do just the next indicated thing. I can overthink something way, way too much. So when I put together my to-do list for the day, it's like, just do the next thing. Don't worry about what the outcome's going to be. Don't worry about obsessing about what if, and all that. I was just do the work. So by the end of the day, everything that I have on my to-do list, well, not everything, most of the stuff can get done. And then I can feel the satisfaction that I've achieved something.
Right.
Whether or not I get the outcome that I want immediately, or whether it's going to be 6 months from now or a year from now, that's out of my control. Right. The only thing I can control is what I'm going to do today.
What you did today, yeah. And you said do the work. Oh my goodness, I did. I think my first Monday message, or one of them, when I just try to share a good, savvy thought about business or life even, and I reviewed a book or kind of brought up a book, do the work. Oh my gosh, that'll get you thinking. And like you said, you got to get out of your own head. I think I have on the top of every list I've made in the past couple of weeks, just recently started this, I say, turn off my brain, and here are the things I have to do. Because I can't get it in my own head. It's like you said, overthinking it is going to slow you down, and you're worried about the outcome more than the process. It's a marathon, photo world. Keep it going,
Yeah, because you can get caught up in your feelings, especially the fear and the anxiety and all that nervousness and stuff like that. But at some point, you just have to go, I'm feeling this way, but I still got to get this done.
Right.
Because you don't want to go the next day and it's still not done. Because that whatever anxiety or fear you have just gets magnified.
Right.
Just because you're just there not doing anything. So I find that I feel a lot better about everything if I just get the work done.
So back it up for me a little bit. You're started a little over 25 years ago, and you've been doing this photography stuff and working your way into the podcast, and you're here today. What started it all? What got you the inspiration enough to pick up the camera and say, I'm going to do a career in this stuff?
Well, I was introduced to photography when I was a member of the Boys Club of Hollywood, and I was around 10 or something. Mm-hmm. So from the very first moment I saw a print appear on that blank sheet of paper in that developing tray, I was sold. So photography just became part of my world back then. And it wasn't until I graduated high school and I joined the newspaper at the Los Angeles City College here in Los Angeles. And I joined the paper called The Collegian. And it was there that I started writing and photographing for the paper. And it was really life-changing because it was the first opportunity I had to do something, to do it well, and have people recognize that.
Yeah.
And it was the first opportunity that I got to have responsibility as I became photo editor and eventually the editor of the paper. And it was revelatory for me, realizing that I was good at something and having it affirmed by other people was just remarkable. So I went to college at UC Berkeley, got a degree in English Lit, and then I came back and got a job at Nikon, where I was for about 8 years on their technical support line. So if people were using Nikon back then, they would call a 1-800 number to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I would be one of the guys that would answer the questions about the equipment. And that was a cool job. I mean, I had access to every camera and lens that Nikon had, and all the film and processing was free, because they wanted us to go out and use the equipment. So I kind of cut my teeth in terms of my photography by just going and shooting every weekend. But then after about 8 years, I was kind of getting itchy to go back to writing and reporting. And then I joined the staff at Outdoor Photographer and Digital Photo Pro magazine and PC Photo magazine at the time. And that's where I started, writing regularly.
Yeah.
And then I was there for about 8 years, and then I went freelance about 9 years ago now. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I've been, as you mentioned, writing books, writing magazine articles, teaching. I was my adjunct at the Art Center College of Design. Started doing the podcast more frequently. So photography in the photo industry has always been part of what I've done.
Yeah.
So,
and seriously, that first time you see film getting printed on a paper and developing it, how it just appears out of nowhere, that is magic. And that's how I started with film.
Is.
And I feel like just so many people are really missing out on the magic of photography and the roots of photography because of this instant gratification of the phones and cameras we have all the time with us. People don't understand how awesome it really is. It's like oh man, it's so cool. And the smell of developer in the morning or getting that stop bath on your hand all day, yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't all been just awesome success. I mean, it sounds like things were building and building and building, and you're throwing out these timelines of like, I was there for 8 years and I did this for another 4 or 5. So, I mean, we get that it took time, but good things happened and also tough times happened where you had to learn the hard way. Can you recall a time in your photographic career history where you tried something and it just didn't work out quite right and you learned a lot from it?
Oh, man, I've been plenty of times with respect to that, especially with the freelance career, because it's not a steady paycheck every 2 weeks.
Right.
So you go through those ups and downs, and it can be anxiety filled as you check the mailbox each day, waiting to see whether that check came in yet.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, the money has always come in when it's needed to come in. I've never been able not to pay my mortgage or my bills or anything like that.
Right.
Which is, I know that a lot of people can't say that. But I guess, the biggest mistakes that I've learned has just been the simplest things. Working with a good contract.
Yeah. Is
probably top. There's nothing that I do without having something written on paper.
For sure.
And, I've as a result of either a bad contract or no contract at all, I've walked away from a lot of money on occasion.
Right.
And it's like, there's no way that I'm going to do it. Or worse yet, the expectations that I have for the job is not the expectations that the client has for the job. And without it on paper, you can't go back to that and say, this is what we agreed to.
Right.
So when people look at the contracts that I have in terms of the description, that I use BlinkBit as the software that I use for writing my estimates and my invoices. And I spend more time writing the descriptions about the expectations of the job than I do working on the pricing, because I want to have every consideration in terms of what we're agreeing to, what it's going to be delivered, how it's going to be delivered, what the content is, all of that in there, so that if they have any issues with it, they can talk to me. I can change it. But once it's signed and they've sent me the money to get to work on the job, if at some point they say, well, we wanted it a week earlier, it's like, well, we gave me a deadline at this time, and we're going to have to work something out if you want me to have 2 weeks for you 2 weeks earlier, or you want more pictures, so yeah, it's like going to a photo job and them saying, we've agreed for you to shoot 20 pictures, but can you shoot this other stuff? And I always have it in my contract. Well, if you want me to shoot other stuff, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars for me to be able to do that, and I don't have to make that decision on the spot. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, that's fine, but remember in the contract I have that I will have to be compensated X amount if you want me to do this additional work. Mm-hmm. So it makes for any awkward conversations. It just kind of eliminates them. So I've been really dutiful about trying to write up as thorough a contract description as possible. It's saved me a lot of trouble.
Yeah, photo world, especially when you're starting out, it's like, it's so easy to just shake a hand and say, yeah, let's do this. And that's it.
No.
I mean, it feels comfortable and easier because you don't have the fear of a contract and not doing enough for it. But you're going to mess up your contracts the first time and the next time and the next time and the next time. You're going to refine it. And it's like, after so many mistakes, you finally get to the point where you can really understand how to be completely transparent, totally upfront, lay out the expectations for them and for you, and then make sure it works before you go into it. Because like you said, when you walk into those things, they always think of something else last minute. And
right.
You got to be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah, and it's your responsibility as the photographer or any sort of creative person to explain it to the person who's
Right.
hiring you, because they have no concept. They have their assumptions, sometimes wrong, about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so they can go in there with some unrealistic expectations, or expectations that are rooted in something else other than your abilities as a photographer or as a podcaster or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you stipulate it there in that contract, it's going to be this fuzzy area. That
Mm-hmm.
fuzzy area can cost you.
Yeah. I'm all about the, making sure everybody knows what's going on before you walk into it, because it can lead to disaster. So
Absolutely.
mm-hmm. When we're going through this, we have all these different tips and tricks that we hear from other people, other photographers, these blogs we're reading, stuff we see on YouTube, even podcasts like yours and mine. And people are wondering, how do they really grow and succeed? Do you have a good idea for them of where, regardless of their business size or model or even level where they're at as photographers, how can they make that grow and succeed?
Well, growing and succeeding seem to be two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
You can grow without necessarily succeeding in the way most people imagine succeeding being, in terms of a monetary thing.
Right.
I've certainly have grown. Whether I've achieved a financial success that other people would say this is financial, I don't know if I'm there at that point. But in terms of growing, I think that's just the result of just being persistent. Just about doing the work, getting it out there, and making people aware of what you do.
Well, I think I think persistence could lead to success, because you can look at success outside of just monetary value too, and I think that's a cloudy area for a lot of learning photographers and even business people. They have this view of success, whatever they might have, and a lot of people it's like financial or just the big house or the nice car. Not always, Sometimes it's like, wow, I really nailed that shoot, and I got a picture like I've never gotten before. And that's a form of success, So I love the fact that you split it up into two things, because nobody's ever done that on the show before. They've never viewed it as two separate things. And I really like that, because now I'm like, great, now I have two questions instead of one, because it does have to be separate. It does.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel I'm successful just for the fact that I'm doing stuff that I love. I mean, right now I get up every morning and I look forward to what I have to do for the day.
Yeah.
And for me, that's successful, because I've been in places in my life where I got up every morning and I didn't want to go where I was going to go or what I had to do. So I don't have the complaint. I may have to get up really early some mornings to do what I need to do, but I'm getting to do what I love to do. So in that respect, I'm really happy.
Yeah.
Whether I've been really satisfied with the income that I've brought in, that's very depending on what day of the week it is sometimes.
Right.
So I'm always aspiring for more, and not just because I want to accumulate stuff, but because when I'm earning the money that I want to be earning, that gives me the freedom to make different choices, whether it's with my show, whether it's my photography, whether it's my personal life. That money provides me the means by which I can do things that I'm really aspiring to. So I'm not trying to sit on a pot of gold.
Right.
I just want the resources to be able to do what I want to do, and not have it be the obstacle that prevents me from being able to do it.
Exactly. Yes, that's a good way to look at it. That people see money as a problem rather than just a factor of working hard and doing what they want to do. And maybe that's what's led to certain aha moments. And I don't think we have one, but there's these times where that one idea clicks or that light bulb goes off, and then things start to change dramatically in a really good way. Can you recall a story or a time when you had an aha moment in your career?
Yeah, I think the aha moment was when the idea for the podcast came into my head. Mm-hmm. I remember I was in my car driving home, and the idea of the title of the show came up. It sounds like a good title, Candid Frame. And I started saying it out loud in my radio announcer voice. This is the Candid Frame. This is the Candid Frame in the car. And I got really excited. And at that moment, I realized that if I do the work, it'll be successful.
Yeah.
And I didn't really define what successful meant. I just knew that if I did it, it would be a really good thing, not just for me, but for people who would listen to it. Because I had such clarity about it that is unlike anything else that's ever happened in my life.
And in those early episodes after publishing, Did you get those low moments where you're like, where are the listeners? What's going on? Like, why isn't this happening? Or did it feel pretty steady from the beginning?
I think that there was so much for me to learn. I was making a lot of mistakes, but in retrospect, that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a perfectionist. I hate making mistakes. And one of the things with podcasting, you're making public mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
People are hearing your mistakes on the air, but I didn't allow that to deter me. And a lot of the times in other things, I don't want to make mistakes, and I don't want to admit that I'm making mistakes. I don't want to have to ask for help and admit that I might not know what I was doing. But with podcasting, I just kind of went for it, and I didn't have that filter or that self-created obstacle that prevented me from sort of moving forward. I just knew I needed to do it. So, but there was at one point where I stopped. There was a break for I think a couple of months where I had not produced a show for a while, and I was seriously considering stopping doing the show. And I don't know what sort of broke me out of that, but I'm so glad that I did, because now it's just been consistent since then. But it's scary to think that I had that moment,
yeah,
where I was thinking of walking away, because I know a lot of podcasters after a while do walk away from it, because it is a good amount of work.
Most podcasters walk away from it.
Yeah, but it's a life-changing thing, because so many opportunities for me have resulted because of the work that I've done in the show.
Right.
That never would have happened if I was still working as a writer and editor at a photo magazine.
And I love the fact that you had that gap of a couple months, weighing the options and considering what you could do in either direction, but you came back. And I think it's because most of us running a business as photographers, we get that job or we get that day where it's like, am I doing this the right way anymore? Should I even be doing this? We have that question in the back of our mind fighting us. And I think if you kind of just look back on where it began, what inspired all this, what got you motivated to start it, if you have something that can remind you of that every day, then you won't forget why you keep doing it. And, that's really helpful.
Yeah. And I get emails from people all over the world, from Australia, from Germany, from South America, people who listen to the show and tell me what the show means to them.
Yeah.
And it never ceases to surprise me when I get those messages. And people don't know how much that means to me.
Right.
To hear that, to realize that this work that I'm doing, in virtual isolation, is making a difference in people's personal and professional lives.
Right.
So it's a show that I created because I wanted to hear these kinds of conversations, and I wasn't hearing it elsewhere. So it was kind of a selfish reason, because I wanted to talk to these people. I wanted to pick their brain. Mm-hmm. And the podcast was the means by which I did it, and by the means by which I shared it with the world. But the fact that it's having such an influence on so many photographers out there is gratifying, and it keeps me going, because anytime I entertain the idea of stopping doing this, I can't think of a good reason to stop doing it. Mm-hmm. At least for right now. For the foreseeable future, I can see myself producing it for a long time.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty awesome when you get those messages or emails or a comment on Facebook where you're like, it reminds you, hey, there are people listening. This is awesome. Because when they write it, or other people listening, they think, you're doing this huge thing and you know about it and you have this status and you're a somebody, where they might not feel like it. But to you, you're sitting at home quietly doing your podcast and pre-recording it, then putting it out. And, you're just living your life, a normal guy. Like, that's how it is. So it is so much gratitude when you get that stuff, and people don't know how big it impacts you. It's like when I'm teaching a class and at the end of that semester or whatever, somebody has something really good to say to me. It's like, this is why I teach. This is it. I mean, all the other students could have cared less about it, but this one cared. That's awesome. I did my job,
Absolutely.
So during your career so far, what's the best advice you've ever received?
I can't really think about good advice that I've ever received, because I've been really bad about soliciting advice from people. My nature is Ibarionex, figure it out. So much of my life, it's been about, you really can't depend on someone else to give you what you need. So you're going to have to sit down and sort of figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I think the best advice I've gotten is don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to ask for help. I think that's probably it wasn't related to the podcast or my photography, but I heard someone say that. They said, don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been doing a lot more of, because there's some stuff that I just don't know about, and I don't have the time to be able to sort of research it, but it's something that I want to do. So now I'll pick the phone of someone who knows about this stuff and say, hey, can I buy you some coffee? Can I sit down and have lunch with you? And sort of pick your brain, because there's something that I want to do, and I really would like to learn from your experience. And so I'm doing that a little more, and I'm finding that that's really incredibly helpful, and it saves myself a lot of time and a lot of aggravation. You really don't do anything of any worth as an island all by yourself. I mean, you put in a lot of the work,
right?
But it's really a consolidation of all the people that you've known and all the experiences that you have. And asking for help and admitting that you don't know how to do something, or you don't know what your next step is, doesn't have to be a negative thing. For me, it helps to make me better. And I think that most people that I approach are really happy to help me. And usually, and that being said, I'm very choosy about who I'm going to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And try to have a clear idea of what I'm asking for. I'm not just going to go, what do you think?
Right.
I need to, when I approach these people, in order to make it worth their time, I have to have thought through it enough to say, this is what I'm trying to do. These are the steps that I've considered thus far in terms of being able to get there. What do you think?
Right.
I think being that thoughtful, rather than going, I want to become, a better podcaster. What should I do? I mean, it's so broad and so general. It's like you don't even know where to start.
Right.
So I think you have to take some responsibility in terms of how you approach the person and what you want to discuss in order to make it worth yours and theirs time.
Yeah, so many people are afraid of asking for help. And I think I was really lucky to learn it on my own the hard way. I was in school, I wrote a paper, and we turned in a rough draft, and, this is in college, and I figure, okay, I'm going to get some good feedback here. It was littered with red marks everywhere, completely wrong. Mm-hmm. So I worked really hard, and I rewrote the entire thing. And when we got it back, the teacher said, I got good news and bad news. The bad news is I didn't finish grading everybody's papers. The good news is everybody who I did grade is here. And mine had red marks on the first couple pages and then nothing the rest of the way. So she did not finish mine. And I had a worse grade than my rough draft. So I was really mad about that. And it brought my overall grade down. I was so ticked off, but I didn't ask. I didn't say anything about it. So from that point on, I realized I need to ask. And when I was in my next school for, finishing my bachelor's, I asked everybody everything all the time in any class. Mm-hmm. I was that guy who was annoying and asking the questions, but I came out with flying colors because of it. And it's like people are so scared to ask. I was a little intimidated to ask you to do an interview, but you have to just get over it and go out and put out the question. So, it's so valuable to know that part.
Really I'm having a face because I'm working on this show, Bullseye, NPR's Bullseye with Jesse Thorne. Mm-hmm. And it's a show that airs on NPR radio stations all over the country. And I'm having to learn how they do things.
Right.
Especially when it comes to editing the show and putting it together. And I have to ask a lot of questions. And there were mistakes that I was making. And I had to get over the fact that I made a mistake because I didn't want to make any mistakes.
Yeah.
But I was making them the mistakes a bigger deal than they were. It was like, okay, I did it wrong. How do I need to do it? How do I need to do it based on what you need or what your expectations are? And then just sort of roll with it and realizing that mistakes is just part and parcel of the game.
Yeah.
Most of the mistakes are not catastrophic. They may be slightly embarrassing, but that's not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah. We can outgrow that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So as long as you sort of embrace that's part of the price of admission, then I think you can do well if you're in for the long game.
Right. So Share with Photo World a really good app or an internet resource that you think they can benefit from knowing about, something that you might use or even produce. Wink, wink, your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the best at self promotion, but I'm going to change that right now. The app is what I recommend people do. Is because I've got 296, 297 interviews by the time people are hearing this, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're into photography and they want to be able to basically have a salon with some of the world's best photographers, there's no better place to go to than download the Candid Frame app. And that's available for both Mac OS, Windows 8, and probably Windows 10 relatively soon, and Android. And you'll get every episode virtually there for free. And you can sit down for 45 to 50 minutes on average, whether you're at the gym or on your daily commute, and you can listen to how other people have done it. If you want conversations about f-stops and shutter speeds and what lens a person uses, my show is not for you. But if you have a passion to live your life's passion, if that's what you want to do, and you want to get gems of wisdom about how other people have done it, then you'll hear it on my show. And I think that's the biggest reason why so many people have been with me for years and almost a decade now, listening to my conversations, is because they get that from the program, and it helps encourage their own journey. So the Candid Frame app, so if they go to thecandidframe.com, they can download it. It's completely free, and they can start listening immediately.
Yeah, Photo World, you can get busy listening to a ton of content and valuable content at that. So download it today. Also, we'll have that link and all the links we need for his social media and everything on the show notes page over at takingtalkpics.com. So be sure to get that app today and start listening. You can fill in the blank days that I don't have with those 3 days, pull out the other 4 with the Candid Frame. So share with us a recent or upcoming project that you have in the mix that you're really excited about.
In terms of an upcoming project, it's probably going to be the changes that I make to the show at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to announce exactly what that is. There are going to be some changes according to with regards to the format of the show, and as well as some things to help support the show, to help take it to the next level. Because there are some ideas that I've had in the back of my mind of things that I want to do with the show. Also, the video channel that I've been playing with on YouTube, and I need resources in order to make that happen. So, part and parcel of my plans are to really sort of to take this and everything that I've been doing for the last 10 years and really make it bigger and better. And so if people are listening to the show and are regular viewers of the YouTube channel, they'll probably be seeing that stuff come the new year.
Get out there, Photo World, get ready for the changes and be a part of it. It's going to be a revolution. Ibarionex, can you share with us one parting piece of guidance and then the best way that we can reach you, whether it be your website, maybe the podcast, or some sort of social media, and then we'll say goodbye.
Biggest piece of advice is that fear is temporary. That whatever fear you have, whether it's economic insecurity, not being talented enough, not knowing what to do, all that stuff doesn't matter. That fear will, if you're doing the footwork and you're doing the work, will go away or get minimized, and then it will get replaced with another fear and another anxiety. But if you're doing the work, you're going to see yourself progressing, getting better. You'll see opportunities that you never could have anticipated just by putting in the work, putting in the time, and keeping your promises to yourself. And that will make a world of difference, and you'll realize that that's really the only solution to any kind of fear, is to make the choice to walk through it and do what needs to be done.
And then where can we find you and follow along with what you're doing?
They can go to thecandidframe.com. That's probably the best place to find the website, as well as my own personal photography. So when I'm doing workshops, they'll also see a page there. And whenever I release a book, I usually have a link there. And if they want to follow me on the social networks, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. That's probably where I'm posting a lot of my more recent work rather than on my website. So if they follow me on Instagram, they'll be seeing what I'm shooting on a sort of a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. Well, Ibarionex, I cannot thank you enough for your time today and sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you, and happy shooting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.